and everyone. Oh wow, yeah. Welcome to my first impression video of a game called Dagon. Dagon, I believe, is an H.P. Lovecraftian story. I know there's a movie called Dagon, which I thought the movie was okay. There's a part in that film I did not like. Involved a very hot girl. I think it was like a fiance of this man, the main star of the film. What I did not like, there's a part that happens and it's like near the end. This is like a 2001 or 2002 film, by the way. She is absolutely naked, gorgeous body, and she's hanging suspended over this, almost like a well, like this well, but it doesn't lead. It leads to like the deep ocean way at the bottom, and she's hung there as a sacrifice. And something comes up and does take her, leaving only her arms. Such a waste, and that pissed me off. I didn't like that. Well, anyways, and just a fun fact. My dear friend Todd's channel used to be known as Dagon, like Dagon the King Killer, I believe. But then he changed it to Surviving the Horror because it more describes what his channel is about. But Dagon was also cool. Craving for more. Okay, so these are things I would have to buy. I think this is free. This was a free game, I believe. Is my volume set okay? Oh, wait. It's, by the way, March 2nd. Oh. It's running at like 72. Okay, let's make this better. Take off motion blur. Does that make a difference? It's running at 72. Okay, I'm going to take this down to what? Okay, let's take it down to this. Oh, here. Wow. Shit. This is... Oh, here, this is what I'm looking for. Okay. Let's go with that. Okay, okay. Let's start the game. Oh, volume. Okay. Seems about right. Starting a new game will overwrite your previous save. Yeah, I think I just quickly did it, but not recently, like the first time I installed this many months ago, just to make sure it went through okay and how it looked. Okay. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. I wish there were more games, kind of, I guess, like this, or like ones where the story plays out and you make choices, kind of like Until Dawn or The Quarry, but have it be an RPG of like a fantasy RPG, like a Skyrim or Baldur's Gate type of game, but in the style of where you're making choices and a movie plays out, and if there is combat, maybe it plays out on its own, depending upon maybe people you take along, or like have there be still like a type of level up, and you put points into how you level your character up and what kind of inventory and weapons you bring. I think that would be cool.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. During the game, you
You will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey. Others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and the author. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the elder sign. Medium. None. Can I switch the mouse sensitivity? You know, the mouse sensitivity is very autoplay. Mouse sensitivity was pretty pathetic. Okay. Oh, it needs to be better than this. It's still way too slow. I normally like having mouse sensitivity down, but this one is a little bit too much. The hell, I cannot move forward. Oh.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
You know, it's like 3:47 in the morning, but I'm doing this because I have to finish this off. This was left over, and it's still like half left over from when I did my Sword and Sorcery Fantasy movie collection. There were ones that I remembered I do have, but they're scattered about that I can't really seem to recall where I placed them, and it would just kind of take too long, you know, to try to locate them all, and I didn't want to procrastinate doing that, you know, for too long, since I told Todd I was going to do it. So
do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. Oh, so you went from my slavery to morphine.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
I don't get why it's still at like 71. For something like this, I'm just freaking stationary, and graphics are good, but they're not that good that it should be like 70. Even freaking Baldur's Gate 3 runs lower, you know, than that. Like 65 to 70. This is like 70, 71. Ooh. Okay, let's...
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
Look at the water. The sky. I can't move forward. This is gorgeous.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
The Huns were... Okay, right. The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe. And I love this history lesson, you know. established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons like ballistas and shit, right? During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on 27th July 1900 before they embarked to China. Yeah, I guess here's the speech. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago, the Huns under their king, Attila the Hun, made a name for themselves. One that, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the first Hagu Convention of 1899. I'm not sure that word, but you can read the discovered trivia immediately or go back to them later in the main menu. Well, turn off displaying trivia if you find that feature distracts you from the story. Distracts you from the story. This can be changed anytime in the options. Trivia upon finding them. Okay, I think that's really cool. That's a cool, nifty feature, I think. I like that.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Gorgeous.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
This is ridiculous that it's 72. I don't like that. Wow, why did it go up to that? I said 60. 60 frickin' hertz. Now save it. It went back up to that. Why? If I turn VSync off. Oh, I see. Right, because VSync like syncs it with your monitor speed, and if I don't want that. Oh, much better. Now we're at 66. Damn, that's really good. Okay. There's like, look, there's no difference when it was, you know, the VSync was on and at 144 hertz, come on, and 60 hertz, come on, you know, much better. I just don't like things taxing on
the
my
weather kept fair, and for
my
uncounted
GPU.
days
I'm very
I
careful
drifted
with that.
aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
And for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores. This is, if I had a family with me, like a wife and son, this would be the same situation that dude that got caught up in the movie Anthropophagus, also known as Grim Reaper. Oh. Any fun facts?
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude. Very
the
descriptive,
change happened
I like that.
whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know. For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Wow. So it's not showing those tips anymore. Is that because... Yeah, show trivia upon finding them. Okay. This squid-like creature.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
Ooh.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
I'm liking this.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
Yeah, right.
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might.
What is that? Up over there, that pulsing mound of mud.
Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, And the next day, I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Oh, like a giant crab creature or something. It looks like it. And a whale? Like the claws of, or the legs of the crab or something. I don't think they get that big, right?
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still traveled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Really? Yeah, I'm like not getting to it. Strange.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
I best not accidentally slip.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath. gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
It's just beautiful. Wow.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
Something crafted by man or something otherworldly?
A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith.
Monolith, yes.
Whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
There's a movie called Monolith, I believe, and I heard it got good reviews. I should see it.
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Storytelling methods. Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness, the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, the shadow out of time, the hunter of the dark, islands emerging from the ocean, the call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies, might go in The Whisperer in Darkness. It's also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. If you've seen the Batman film, it's one of the newer ones, probably, I want to say maybe a year and a half old, called The Doom That Came to Gotham. And it deals with Cthulhu, and Batman actually fights Cthulhu. It's really cool. Do check it out. Some of Lovecraft's other stories, also, it's a combination of comic book, Dark Horse comic book storytelling, or DC comic book storytelling, which is Batman, and Lovecraftian lore. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon. But let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending. Sure.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
See that thing over there, that octopus creature to the left? Kind of like an Ursula thing. In Dagon, there's a creature like that you see at the end. A female. I mean, she's hot, the actress who played it. But then when it was revealed that she's like that, with that octopus thing, I don't know. Though the creatures were still strewn, disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well.
Yeah, look at that.
Of their faces and
right
forms I dare not speak in detail.
There's just not much detail on them.
The mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
Oh, these faces? Okay.
They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
You would hope.
Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, Polyphemus-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat.
It's like my home or now or something.
At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention.
Wow.
Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Right. They would think you mad. Think me mad. Oh, hey. The journalist, Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the worlds of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written of him or by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, H.P. Lovecraft. But he also took criticisms to heart, which resulted, so he had a thin skin in a way, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrated on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. Getting into the Roaring Twenties, a year away from that. In this example, excerpt from the Conservative. The master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the idea of world peace. So this must be a quote from here. Yep. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly restrain secret armaments and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest. Again, unarmed victims, no country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. I should be ending this shortly, but so I'm going out the door. Okay.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines. Really? Philistines are like the Hebrews and Catholic, the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem, not what do you call that? Sicilian, right? No, that's different. It's a country. Assyrian poem, and an underworld prison warder in one of the Babylonian texts. He's often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's works, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that reside in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. I wonder if that was the name of them in that movie, right? I should see it again, but when it comes to that scene with that naked beauty being sacrificed, it's very I get very emotional about that. Very sad.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Okay, I think I could quit and save here, but okay, August Derleth and the Cthulhu mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company Arkham House. Though he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's works, after his death he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's work are often misunderstood and misinterpreted in today's culture. Yeah, Lovecraftian stuff is, like Cthulhu. He is, cosmic. He's a cosmic being, right? Creature. From Relay, right? I don't know everything, but like his ship or whatever crashed into water, hence why he's like a water-based creature. And he created an underwater city relay, something along those lines. I'm not exactly clear on the details, or I don't remember it all, but it is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. See, even at 1080p, the graphics are really nice. This is running at like 54, 55. There's no reason for it to run at like 70, 71. So, folks, be mindful of that. Don't just settle on, a temp of like 70 when really it should not be. Even if the graphics are tremendously great, try to get it as low as possible. Try to do what you can to bring it down. Try to find a good balance between, graphics and pushing your hardware to the max, Okay, save and exit. Okay, so I'm going to end it here, guys. My impressions of this so far, not so much a game, but you kind of clicking on things and reading nice fun facts about this world and the author and everything. And it's more of you just kind of being here as a spectator, going through this man's journey, a role of which you, the player, assumes. And I dig it. So give it a shot, guys. It's free. I think their DLC you can pay for. And if it's anything like this, so long as you can get it on the cheap, like $1 or $2, it might be worth your coin. So that's what I have to say about it. So that's it. And see you all in the next adventure.